NFL football coach Jon Gruden has resigned as head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders after a New York Times report showed emails he sent before he was hired in 2018 contained what are being described as racist, homophobic, and misogynistic comments. Was this a guy getting what he deserved, or the latest case of cancel culture claiming another scalp, or something in between? Friends, it's time for Hold the Line. Welcome to Hold the Line. I'm Buck Sexton. One thing that's definitely changed in America today is it seems like if you are on the wrong side of wokeness, if cancel culture comes for you, there can be really no salvation, especially if you're identified with either being a conservative or if you are a white male. These seem to be the rules of the game as we see it playing out. And given that there's so much information out there about people that didn't exist before, that you can reach back in time and see what people said, wrote, texted, essentially get inside their heads years, perhaps even decades ago, brings a whole new set of facts to bear when somebody is up for a really big job, has a really big job, is in the public eye. And how do we deal with people having imperfect, or in some cases, quite inappropriate and nasty things to say? Well, we're going through another one of these, a pretty high-profile one today, an instance of the culture certainly canceling someone. Jon Gruden, who is one of the better-known NFL coaches out there. He's on a $100 million 10-year contract coaching the Raiders. He tweeted out that he had resigned as head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders, or he put out this statement, rather. "I love the Raiders and do not want to be a distraction. Thank you to all the players, coaches, staff, and fans of Raider Nation. I'm sorry, I never meant to hurt anyone." All right, now it's quite clear that he never meant to hurt anyone, in the sense that his comments went to somebody who he thought he was having a private conversation with, and because of an investigation that had nothing to do with him, but he got brought into it. He was not an employee of what was the Washington Redskins team, now the Washington football team it's called, again, because of political correctness changing the names of teams too. But they were investigating the Washington football team's practices and whether there was a culture of misogyny or racism or anything like that. And some of Gruden's emails got caught up into this. So here's the kind of stuff that came out as a result. Remember, he's not an employee, but his stuff was caught in this digital dragnet, if you will. Gruden's comments, as reported by the New York Times, messages were sent to Bruce Allen, the former president of the Washington football team, and others while he was working for ESPN during Monday Night Football. In the emails, Gruden called the league's commissioner, Roger Goodell, you can kind of see there on the screen, and a clueless anti-football P-word. Said Goodell should not have pressured Jeff Fisher to draft someone he used a gay slur for Michael Sam, a gay player chosen by the team in 2014. Now look, very stupid things to put out in an email, very, very stupid things to put out there when you're somebody in his position, and also in some cases using words that he really shouldn't use, and saying things that are nasty, that are not appropriate in any context. But losing his job over this is interesting, and you have to wonder if there was a different context here, if he was not Gruden, who was seen as kind of a maybe right-of-center guy, seen as a white male who might have some conservative sympathies. He could have gotten another chance, possibly. Just wondering if the double standards are applying here. From the New York Times, Gruden also criticized President Obama during his re-election campaign in 2012, as well as then Vice President Biden, whom Gruden called a nervous, clueless P-word. He used similar words to describe Goodell and DeMaurice Smith, the executive director of the NFL Players Association. Look, calling Biden a nervous, clueless person would have been totally fine. The usage of the other P word there was probably quite unwise, obviously, and not in good taste, right? So he's got problems. He's lost his job as a result of all of this. But here's what I'm talking about. My buddy Clay Travis, who I host a radio show with, tweeted this today. Deshaun Watson has been accused of sexually assaulting 24 different women. He is currently eligible to play in the NFL, yet Jon Gruden was just forced to resign as a coach because of years-old derogatory emails. Actions used to matter more than words, Clay writes. Now it is the opposite. It does seem like there are exceptions made for people, and certainly one's past can be pushed aside if he is a player of enough repute and enough value to the league. But in this case, Jon Gruden as a coach, because he offended women, because he offended minorities, because he offended members of the LGBTQ community, there was not an apology and a I'm sorry. It was just he's gone. He was assumed gone right away. And then, of course, you hear some of the commentary out there. People like Don Lemon over at CNN.
And it's interesting that his response was that he didn't, that he had no racism within him. There wasn't a stitch of racism in him. But these emails, again, if these emails are true, and it appears that they are because he is resigning, he has resigned, then it goes against everything that he said. We often hear people saying, I'm not racist, I'm not homophobic, I'm not misogynistic, I'm not any of these things, when their actions actually show otherwise.
When their actions actually show otherwise. No apologies allowed for Jon Gruden here, the coach of, when I say apologies allowed, he's somebody who you knew he was going to lose his job as soon as the stuff came out because that's the nature of the cancel culture. Meanwhile, there are people in the league who, you see this and you say they seem to get away with a whole lot more. Just a double standard question here, folks. Who gets held to it and who doesn't? Or rather, who gets punished and who is given another day to fight, so to speak, to play, to coach, whatever it may be. So Gruden is gone. Now let's get on to some other things. We'll have more on this with the First TV's Morgan Zegers when we come back, but I want to tell you about one of the newest sponsors here on Hold the Line, Secure. Big tech is taking advantage of us. They're mining our data, remining our data, selling our data, and guess what? We don't benefit from it whatsoever. All the while, they count their money and abuse your privacy. If you really think your emails, texts, and messages are private and safe from governments, hackers, and two-faced profit-hungry corporations, think again. This is where Secure comes in. Secure's email platform is 100% private. It's Swiss-hosted, they use their own servers in Switzerland, and have no ties to American big tech companies. With Secure, there is no data mining whatsoever. It's completely private. This is what makes Secure different from every other email and messaging provider out there. Secure is the best email platform in the world when it comes to security and privacy. It's unmatched. Look, there's a reason Secure built their company the way they did. We need to make a stand and take back our privacy from the big tech monopolies. With my discount code BUCK, Secure will only cost you $7.50 a month for full access. That's nothing. Go to secure.com today and create your secure email address and account. Use promo code BUCK for 25% off a whole year. That's secure.com, SEKUR.com, promo code BUCK. Morgan Zegers joins when we come back. Now, former Las Vegas Raiders head coach Jon Gruden was just 4 years into a 10-year contract worth a reported $100 million when he announced his resignation this morning. The resignation comes after emails that were part of an NFL investigation into an alleged toxic work environment in the Washington Redskins organization. I should say Washington football team. That's where all this happened. It's worth noting Gruden wasn't even a target of the investigation. For more on this, let's bring in First TV contributor and founder of Young Americans Against Socialism, Morgan Zegers. Morgan, good to see you.
Thanks for having me, Buck.
What are we supposed to make of this? The guy wasn't the target of an investigation, but people found emails because of another investigation of an organization that he had nothing to do with. He said some things that were very unwise to put in an email, but now he's lost his job. What do we make of it?
Yeah, this one was a unique one for me because I know this won't be like a spicy take, Buck, but honestly, if you're a boss, if you are the leader of a workplace, then you probably shouldn't be speaking like that, especially on work emails. But at the end of the day, where do we have room for grace? Do we have room for forgiveness? Or was this a situation where his behavior, his rhetoric was just creating a toxic workplace and he had to go? So it's one of those situations where we don't really know the full details. And because of cancel culture these days, we just have no room for forgiveness.
And what do we make of the fact that there are a lot of people who will point to double standards in the NFL specifically about how you can be an alleged or even convicted felon, violent felon, or have a violent felony in one's past, multiple sexual assault allegations, and the NFL turns a blind eye to that. But you say the wrong things, and by the way, it was from he was acting in his private capacity, but he sent emails to somebody who, it was on their work server, and that's how this all came out. But he's fired. people that actually commit crimes or not, there does seem to be a double standard.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's a double standard in all of society. It's we see it in pop culture, we see it in music, we see it really all over the place. Where like the women's movement are the same ones promoting the hip hop singers and hip hop songs that talk about degrading women and using them as objects. And so society's full of double standards these days. I don't think there's justice in this situation at all. I wish that they would have given him grace. It also made me think of what happened at CNN. I mean, remember when Jeffrey Toobin was caught like masturbating on a Zoom call with his work employees, like his fellow employees on the Zoom call. And then they brought him back months later and just brought him on back, said, welcome on, and we're going to incorporate you back in the workplace. And to me, it's strange to see how companies choose to do this, and technology certainly adds to it. But I do wish that we were more of a graceful society when this kind of stuff happens. And it's a shame to see this while they allow people with domestic violence situations on their record to continue to play.
Switching gears for a moment, but I guess staying in the general realm of sports, the Brooklyn Nets just announced they're effectively banning point guard Kyrie Irving from the team until he gets vaccinated. This is from the New York Post. Given the evolving nature of the situation and after thorough deliberation, we have decided Kyrie Irving will not play or practice with the team until he is eligible to be a full participant. This is from Brooklyn General Manager Sean Marks in a statement earlier today. Irving, however, is not backing down here. What do you make of it?
Good for him. I hope he holds the line. I mean, in true fashion of your show, right? I hope he holds the line. Same thing with the Southwest employees. Same thing with the other athletes that are speaking out. I mean, I even saw LeBron James retweeted something and shared a quote tweet with his own remarks in support of it about vaccination mandates on players. And I feel for them. Honestly, Buck, I don't watch a lot of movies, a lot of TV, a lot of like high level sports with the celebrity kind of athletes. If anything, I'll go to like a local football game or I'll watch the college team. I was at the ASU game last week. But for me, I just don't believe in putting these celebrities on pedestals. I don't believe in putting these sports teams on pedestals where, like you were saying earlier, they have these terrible crimes that they've committed and then they're put on the field for all these young minds to watch and look up to. I think all of it is really disturbing when you can kind of get into the nitty gritty of it. But I have been paying so much attention to sports over the last couple of months because of the vaccination mandate. So this grandma, I may not be very cool, but I've been paying attention to this pop culture stuff, whether Nicki Minaj or the athletes, everything. And I really commend him. I hope that this is a really big wake-up call for everyone. We've lived in such complacency, such dangerous complacency where we don't take we do take for granted our luxuries and our freedoms that we have here in America. And we take for granted that we live in a society of choice. For now, though, we no longer live in a society of choice. We are in many ways forced to do certain things because of this pandemic, and specifically these vaccine mandates. So the athletes that are experiencing this for the first time, I hope it's a very eye-opening experience, and I hope that it shifts their beliefs on the role of government in their lives.
And for those who are holding the line, pardon the expression, the Southwest airline situation seems to have gotten a lot of attention the last couple of days. We talked about it here on the show. I'm hearing, including from pilots calling in on radio, that it's a combination of factors, Morgan, that there are some people who are either using up sick days in advance of the mandate, others staying home, and there are some logistical and routing problems that Southwest has had come together in this kind of perfect storm in the last few days. What are you hearing about it? But also, what do you think of the possibility here that it's the beginning of the first real pushback effort from in a major corporation against the vaccine mandate?
Oh, Buck, I mean, you're talking to the right girl here. So I fully expected this to happen for quite some time. People that think, oh, we're almost at the tail end because people are getting vaccinated and we're all set. We are entering a whole new phase of American life, and I hope people are ready. Get on board because the train has left the station. What I'm excited, though, is courage is contagious. So first you see like little situations of Nicki Minaj. You see these athletes that never talk about politics are starting to speak out and say, I deserve choice. I deserve autonomy over my own body. This is really fascinating. So when these first vaccine mandates were announced by Biden, a lot of people panicked. They said, I'm going to have to get it. I'm going to have to quit my job. And I started to try and tell people, no. This is all part of the problem of us having this basic ignorance as Americans. We don't fully understand our federalist system. And we just look at what DC tells us to do, DC politicians, DC bureaucrats, and we think that that is what we now have to comply with. That is wrong. We have a federalist system. These states will protect us. Our local governments are there for us. Our local sheriffs and law enforcement are there for us. And then on a individual level, as employees and employers, we also have the power to check the government. The people have power. Our founders intended for us to be able to fight back in these situations. They anticipated these moments of tyranny and these unconstitutional mandates, and they wanted to give us the power to fight back. We have the power to end these things. We just need to stand up. So the Southwest employees that did this, bravo. Thank God they did it, because it's inspiring people to realize you can have change on an individual level. You have to work together at the community level, employer level, chamber of commerce level, work with your local leaders, work with local law enforcement, coordinate with state leaders, and then the states will fight back. That's what we just saw with Texas as well. Governor Abbott just declared that those vaccine mandates are now illegal.
Morgan Zeggers, always good to see you. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Between strict COVID regulations in schools and a curriculum dictated by far-left ideologues, parents around the country are beginning to feel as if they have no control over their children. Coming up, New York Post columnist Carol Markowitz joins to help answer the question, who does your child really belong to? Right now, I want to tell you about my friends at My Digital Money. The crypto market is hot right now. People want to get in on the action, but how do they start? That's where My Digital Money comes in. If you want to buy and sell Bitcoin, Ethereum, any of these digital tokens, you need a platform that's easy to use, where you can self-trade crypto out there on the open market. This is one of the few US-based crypto companies that will answer your phone call and help you get started. They offer an unparalleled military-grade security for your coins, as well as trigger orders to help you secure opportunities for gains or limit your losses without having to watch your account all the time. Look, you deserve a team of dedicated professionals who have your back, speak to you honestly, and treat you like a human, not a number. Check them out at mydigitalmoney.com. That's mydigitalmoney.com, and we'll be right back with more Hold the Line. Over the past year and a half, our school systems have increasingly refused to engage with parents, from the clash over teaching critical race theory curriculum to mask mandates to virtual learning. Parents have become rightfully very angry with school boards. Instead of working through those concerns, the National School Board Association dubbed these worried parents domestic terrorists and asked the Biden administration to intervene. The White House, of course, jumped on the idea. In her recent opinion piece on FoxNews.com, our next guest poses a very important question. Does your child really belong to you? New York Post columnist Carol Markowitz joins us now to discuss. Carol, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me, Buck.
So let's have you start the answer to your own question here. Does one's child belong to parents? Who does a kid belong to these days?
I say absolutely yes, and I think parents should fight for that right. I think parents have really given up a lot in the last few years. With the pandemic, I think a lot of city parents just gave up on having school and didn't think that they could fight for their kids. I think right now there's all these restrictions on kids that make no sense. I write about this all the time. And I think this is the latest frontier in it. In the last 19 plus months, parents have seen up close what their kids are learning, and they don't like it. And I think the parents who are fighting back are doing a great job, and there should be more parents fighting back. More parents should get involved in their local school boards. The best emails I get are, I decided to run for my school board because of what's been going on for the last, year plus. And I really want to see some change.
Last week, Virginia gubernatorial candidate Terry McAuliffe had quite a moment of honesty, it seems, about parents and what he thinks of their input in the whole education process. Here's how that went.
But I'm not going to let parents come into schools and actually take books out and make their own decisions. I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach. Interesting.
Yeah.
I thought that school board meetings were about that kind of thing.
Yeah. So what was particularly interesting to me about that exchange was it was about a parent who stood up at in Fairfax County, Virginia, and said that she discovered in her kid's high school library 2 completely pornographic books. I'm talking, you would not be able to cite right now what was in these books. It's actually the most disgusting thing I've ever heard. I've never been so startled by something. I grew up in New York City. I think nothing could shock me. This was shocking. It was pedophilia. It was pornographic. It was awful. And it was 2 books, and she pulled them from the library, and she stood up at this school board meeting, and she started reading from these books. And the school board members started saying, whoa, you can't read this. You can't read this here. And that is what Terry McAuliffe was defending. That is what he thinks parents should not be able to go in and get. He's not talking about some racy Judy Blume. He's talking about actual pornographic pedophilic material.
Unbelievable. Here's a Florida mom, Keisha King, who talked about how she feels like these Democrat school boards, Democrat-dominated education system that we've got in the public school system, they want to silence parents, and this is what we got to do.
And the FBI could be knocking at your door because you might have said the wrong thing at a school board meeting. These people, they are serious. They want to silence us and shut us down. I really think at this point, the only thing to do is have a mass exodus from the public school system. That's it.
What do you think about that?
Yeah. So maybe she's right. I prefer right now to fight. We may need to leave that public school system eventually, but I don't want to give it up. I don't want to just surrender it to the left and say, okay, here you go. These are your winnings. I really think that we should fight. And I think that's what the parents are doing at the school board meetings. And every time somebody emails me and says, I'm running for school board, I think that is the fight. I think parents are getting more involved. I think they're really doing a lot to say, no, my kids belong to me. And Keisha's a great example of that. She has been outspoken about CRT as well. She had a viral clip about anti-CRT that was amazing. I think people like her are what we need right now more than ever. I don't think she should abandon the system. I think she should fight for what's hers.
There's also the topic of masking children that I know you've been, speaking of in the fight, you've been on that one for a long time. I'm so exhausted with it and the clear, in my mind, religious attachment now that people have not only to masking themselves, but that a lot of parents I see have to masking their small children outside. Just by way of bringing us or centering us for this discussion, here's Dr. Fauci in November of 2020 on what we knew a year ago about children and whether they spread this virus.
If you look at the data, the spread among children and from children is not really very big at all, not like one would have suspected.
And yet we still have mask mandates in schools across the country. We still have, even though all these adults can get vaccinated, they're like, Carol, what's going on here? Are people just out of their minds?
They are out of their minds. They've been scared to death by the media, which runs these sensationalist headlines. I point to that Fauci clip all the time. It's one of my favorites. I mean, that one, or I really like the one where he says, as we've been saying all along, this was in May, outdoor mask use is like unnecessary. Of course, they had never said that before, but it's irrelevant here. He absolutely said that kids don't spread the virus like we would have thought. And nothing has changed. Absolutely no information has come out since that point to change that opinion from any scientist or any medical official. And yet we behave as if kids are this major spreader of this virus. Even the saner voices, there's, a New York Times writer, David Leonhardt, that, they listen to him. The left listens to him. Every time he suggests maybe we shouldn't wear masks outside, they kind of, calm down the mask wearing a little bit. But he even tweeted today a scientist saying something like, oh, the kids, because they're not vaccinated, can still spread it. Well, no, that's really not the case. Kids are not great spreaders of this thing. We've known it for a long time. Here's Fauci admitting that.
Last month, New York Governor Kathy Hochul expanded the mask mandate for children. This was the headline: face coverings required at state-regulated child care facilities for children 2 and up, all staff and visitors. We're masking up 2-year-olds. As I understand it, there are countries like the UK where they don't mask up kids in school at all anymore.
Yeah, we're the only ones masking 2-year-olds that I know of in the Western world. Where I think possibly some places in Canada, maybe, I don't even know if they're still doing that. But in general, we've been the only ones to behave this way. Most countries start masking at 6. Some countries in Europe start at 11 or 12. Some have never required masks in school at all, and they have not had worse outcomes than us whatsoever. In fact, some of them have had better outcomes. We're doing something that doesn't work, and we just can't get off the merry-go-round and admit that, because these masks are useless. When my kids, my 5-year-old wears his little Batman mask and makes who feel better here? I mean, who imagines that he is really wearing that thing and that it makes any difference, and that he's not taking it off or like pulling it down or whatever, because he's 5 and that's what 5-year-olds do. It's so
you're a
irrelevant.
parent, and you are brave as somebody who is right of center and lives in Brooklyn, which for anybody who's watching around the country may not know is like the heart of Democrat insanity, at least in New York. Do you come across parents who think that, Fauci's a really great, smart guy and stuff, but they've started to realize that masking up their kids really is idiotic and borderline child abuse? I mean, are they starting to figure this out, or are they all true believers still?
So I just want to defend my borough a little bit. I live in a really crazy part. I live in Park Slope. I live in a super left area.
Oh my gosh.
But there's a lot of Brooklyn. Yeah, there's a lot of Brooklyn that is very sane. My Russian Jewish, ex-Soviet community, very sane. A lot of the immigrant community is very sane. But yes, I absolutely have met people in Park Slope who know that masking is pointless, but say, look, if it makes people comfortable and we have to continue to do it to keep schools open, I'm willing to do that. I'm not willing to do that. I'm not willing to be quiet about it. I absolutely, never wear a mask when I'm picking up my kids from school or anything like that, because wearing a mask outside is crazy, and I'm vaccinated and I'm done with it. But yeah, I think until these parents fight for their kids, is never going to stop. And I don't know that these parents are ever.
I've started telling them they're going to be masking up kids next fall. It doesn't even matter.
Oh, yeah.
This is now the thing that there are people they think that they need to do this.
I'll be living in Florida, hopefully.
Yeah.
But yes.
I'll see you down there, Carol. Thanks for staying in the fight. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much.
A big win in the courts for New York State healthcare workers who are refusing the vaccine on religious grounds. Coming up, we'll talk to the executive director for the Standing for Freedom Center, Ryan Helfenbein, about how vaccine mandates have become a direct threat to religious freedom in America. But I want to talk to you about protecting yourself from online criminals. Did you know the Social Security Administration's computer servers are 45 years old? Or that the computer servers at Health and Human Services are 50? Maybe that's how cyber criminals hack U.S. Census Bureau computers, and that's why everything about you that's stored there is really vulnerable, right? You need to be worried about these things. But the worst cybercrime you can be a victim of is actually home title theft. Here's how that works. Cyber criminals hack into vulnerable government, bank, or mortgage company servers where copies of your home's title is stored. He forges your signature stating you sold your home to him. He then borrows on your home and leaves you in debt. You won't know until collection notices show up. Protect your most valuable asset today. Go to HometitleLock.com and register your address to see if you're already a victim, and use promo code RADIO for 30 free days of protection. Again, that's HometitleLock.com, promo code RADIO. Again, HometitleLock.com. Make sure you use that promo code RADIO. We'll be right back with more. Hold the line. A federal judge in New York State issued a ruling in favor of healthcare employees who have legitimate reason to refuse the vaccine. U.S. Northern District Judge David Hurd of Utica has temporarily barred state employees from enforcing the jab on healthcare workers who claim lawful religious exemption. It's from USA Today. Many of the medical workers who had claimed religious exemptions have been placed on suspensions pending the outcome of the court battle. These workers, potentially numbering in the thousands, could now return to jobs as some hospitals and nursing homes face staffing shortages. The order struck a blow to Governor Kathy Hochul's efforts to enforce strict COVID-19 vaccine mandates, which she has repeatedly called the priority in order to slow the virus's spread. Ryan Helfenbein is the founding executive director for the Standing for Freedom Center. He joins now to explain his thoughts. Ryan, thanks for being with us.
Hey, it's great to be with you, Buck.
Let's start with this. You're very outspoken on the matter. You've said that this is a threat to religious and individual liberty.
Yes.
What's going on here? I mean, why are there people walk us through some of the different religious grounds on which one can oppose or people do oppose the vaccine.
Yeah, I would say, first of all, with the ethical concerns, the violation of an individual choice, there is the religious exemption. There's also political reasons as well. You have political freedom and religious freedom in this country. So in terms of ethical concerns, in terms of how these vaccines, whether it be Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, or Moderna, how they actually went about using fetal tissue in the experimentation to come to the protein booster that is known as the vaccine. That's one reason why you might hold a religious exemption. The other reason is on the grounds of medical reasons. between you and your doctor. There are a lot of people that are put in jeopardy or in harm's way by the virus, and it's shown to be by the vaccine, or it's shown to be harmful, has proven to be harmful. So there's a lot of data out there. And right now, unfortunately, what you're getting in the 24-hour newsroom media cycle by mainstream media is not scientific. It is more propaganda and it's disinformation. I think that there are many reasonable people, and I want to be clear, I am not anti-vaccine, but I am anti-mandate. You need to actually know your options. I think in the state of New York, the judge ruled correctly. I think there are many grounds by which people can have a conscientious objection to receiving the vaccine and on religious grounds. It's protected in the First Amendment of the Constitution, and there has never been an emergency pretense to suspend our unalienable rights. That's very, very important. We have never had an emergency situation by which you can say, hey, the Constitution, our standing policy in America is the Constitution. That has never been suspended in the case of an emergency.
Certainly, you've outlined the ethical grounds, the concerns about individual freedom, Ryan. These are concerns that I share, and it's one of the reasons why I also oppose the mandate, but not necessarily am anti. I would never describe myself as anti-vaccine in any context.
Yeah.
But on the religious specific grounds here, could you just, what are the specifically religious objections to this? Or is religious exemption really the wrong term? Is it more of an ethical objection that people in general are going for when they say they want to opt out?
Okay, so great question. There are medical reasons one can object, and I think that extends itself to political freedom and conscientious objection. When it comes to the faith itself, one of the things that as Christians, and I'll speak as a Protestant evangelical, anything that proceeds forth without faith is actually sin. That comes from Romans chapter 14 in verse 3. One of the things that we have in the Western tradition, a longstanding tradition that goes all the way back to Martin Luther and the Protestant Reformation, is to bound our conscience to the Word of God. The Word of God binds our conscience as Christians. And he said, here I stand, I can do no other, God help me. So one of the things that we must understand from our own legal and religious tradition, that they go hand in hand, the Constitution, it was all baked in to that understanding that we on religious grounds can object. If our conscience is bound to the Word of God and does not permit us to move forward, to accept any form of tyranny, we can object on religious grounds. That alone is enough in our legal tradition.
Governor Greg Abbott of Texas issued an executive order prohibiting vaccine mandates in his state by any entity. The order states no entity can compel receipt of a COVID-19 vaccination by any individual, including employee or consumer, who objects to such vaccination or any reason or personal conscience based on a religious or medical reason. The COVID-19 vaccine is safe, effective, and our best defense against the virus, but should always remain voluntary and never be forced. So Texas taking the strongest stand of any state against mandates. Do you think other states will follow suit? And what have we seen in terms of just, well, actually, let's start with that one. Should we be expecting that other states will actually follow the mold that Texas has set here?
Well, I would expect at least 24 states would be also signing on to that as well, because of the state's attorneys general's letter back on September the 16th to the Biden administration. So I would expect at least half the states joining in with Governor Greg Abbott down there in Texas. And just a reminder, Texas-based company Southwest Airlines is there in Dallas. And so this would even apply to that airline. And most of the personnel, most of the pilots are ex-military. So they would be in that longstanding tradition of defending and upholding the Constitution. So that we're going to have an ideological battle across the board in this country.
What do you think should happen next for folks who oppose this? What should the steps be that they take? Mask not compliance. What do you recommend?
Well, I think there's a lot of things that you can do. One of those, if you're claiming to be a Christian, and you're a member, and I'm talking about an active member of a church, I'm not saying conveniently. Don't conveniently claim a religious exemption if you're not going to church. Alliance Defending Freedom, other organizations say, hey, that's a big no-no. Don't do that. Claim the medical exemption on medical grounds. But if you actually have a warrantable, viable reason, and it's clear that you have a pattern of religious belief in your life and that has governed your life, you absolutely get a letter from your pastor claiming religious exemption. Use that. Take those steps. But either way, Buck, here's what I would urge anyone listening. The price of freedom is very costly. It has been paid for in blood. Every generation has had to make a sacrifice in order to keep and preserve freedom. It is very costly right now across the country, but pay it now. There is not going to be a better time to do it. I would recommend everybody who has a voice to raise that voice. And everybody, I don't care who you work for, you need to draw the line right now, this far, no farther. I would not give in.
Ryan, thanks for being with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Buck.
Everything about the Biden administration is fake, including the kids in this bizarre space video that Vice President Harris put out. They were all child actors. We'll bring you that story coming up next in Quick Hits. But I want to tell you about my friends at My Digital Money. Crypto is hot, right? Bitcoin, Ethereum, a lot of digital tokens out there. How do you get started if you want to invest? If you want to get into this crypto game? Well, you need My Digital Money. It's an easy-to-use, self-trading crypto IRA platform with incredible customer service. It's one of the few U.S.-based crypto companies that will answer your phone call and make sure that you get started with experts who can answer your questions. They've got incredible features for you as well, great security. You can even set up a Play Money account so you can test how well you do with crypto without risking actual money. When it comes to your money, you deserve a team of dedicated professionals who have your back and speak to you honestly. Check them out at mydigitalmoney.com. That's mydigitalmoney.com, and we'll be right back with Quick Hits. Ben and Jerry don't know why they sell their own ice cream in certain states, and another nurse records being escorted out of a hospital for not getting the jab. Is there any end in sight? It's time for Quick Hits, friends. Let's get to it. First of all, if you have not seen this, Kamala Harris's video, where it's part of a YouTube series, apparently, where she's supposed to be made to seem particularly likable and friendly, which is a challenge. Because, as you know, we're talking about Kamala Harris here, who is charisma deficient, I think you could say. And, well, the video is itself hilarious because it seems so absurd. And it turns out the children in the video were paid actors. Check this out.
I just love the idea of exploring the unknown. And then there's other things that we just haven't figured out or discovered yet. To think about so much that's out there that we still have to learn. Like, I love that. I love that. And so I'm very excited about the Space Council. We're going to learn so much as we increasingly, I think, are curious and interested in the potential for the discoveries and the work we can do in space. So that's one of the things I'm most excited about. But the other, you guys are going to see. You're gonna literally see the craters on the moon with your own eyes. Oh my goodness. With your own eyes, I'm telling you, it is gonna be unbelievable.
With your own eyes. First of all, these kids are teenagers. They're like using social media, they got Google, they got a lot of things that they can do. You'd think that this wouldn't be the most exciting thing ever, and yet they act like it is, or she acts like it is. No, actually, they act too because they're paid child actors. Because Kamala Harris sitting down to just talk to like normal American children who aren't being paid to react to what she has to say here. That for them is that they realize the handlers, the Democrats who are trying to put this thing together. No, we need professionals. We need professionals if we're going to make Kamala Harris look likable. Ben and Jerry were asked why they still sell ice cream in Texas and Georgia if they oppose the policies in those states. Here's what the ice cream guys said.
You guys are big proponents of voting rights. Why do you still sell ice cream in Georgia? Texas, abortion bans. Why are you still selling there?
I don't know.
I mean, yeah. there are limits to how much ice cream one should eat, how much weed one should smoke. I mean, these are things that's important to be reminded of going forward. But anyway, I'm just kidding. I don't know if there's any. I don't know if Ben and Jerry smoke any weed. But I have no idea. It was a joke. It was a joke. Who knows? But the ice cream's not. Let's be honest. The ice cream's not. There's better ice cream out there. So I just wish these guys didn't have to be social justice warriors. Why does ice cream have to be political? Well, they've made it political. And then you got this nurse who was escorted out of UCLA Medical Center. Here's how that went.
I'm being escorted out of UCLA for standing up for medical freedom, despite coming to work, willing to work. And I just can't believe that this is what they're doing right now. And I'm gonna fight for all of us out there, and I will continue to fight. And this is not okay. Came to work despite being unvaccinated, willing to work for patients, to help out staff, and this is how we're treated.
Not allowed to oppose the mandate. If you were a healthcare worker, you were a hero, of course, when you were standing on the front lines against the pandemic. But then this happened, and now they have the mandates, and you will get fired. You'll get escorted out from your job. That's the way they treat people now, because you can't even have an exemption for natural immunity. You have to get the shot, or else you're reckless. You're a bad person. That's what the mandates say, at least. And one more thing here. Nancy Pelosi, the most powerful Democrat politician in the country. I mean, I think she's more powerful than Joe Biden, really, because who's calling the shots with Biden? It's a committee. Pelosi makes her own decisions, as scary as they may be. Here's what she says.
The Build Back Better is three baskets. It's climate, which we spent some time talking about already, health, jobs, security, and moral responsibility.
Wait, but there's other things. She didn't line those two things up. Let's remind ourselves, though, there's one thing that Pelosi also today spoke about that she said is absolutely going to be in the final version of the bill, and that is, of course, the $600 that will be trackable, that anything above $600, I should say, will be trackable by the IRS, by the federal government, in terms of your bank accounts, because that's what the country really needs right now. $70 billion for more IRS agents, for more aggressive tax enforcement, and Big Brother not only being able to force a shot on your arm, but see every transaction that you might make in a bank of any kind of over $600. This is what Democrats bring you as governance, my friends. This is the way they do what they do. That's it for tonight's Hold the Line. The No Spin News with Bill O'Reilly is up next. Shields high.